everybody and welcome back. I'd like to start by extending a huge hypothetical hug to any of my new subscribers. I know that to some people, 10 new subscribers probably isn't that big of a deal, but to me, it's definitely something worth spontaneously bursting into dance for. So thank you for the exercise and your wonderful company, and I look forward to getting to know you better. Today I'll be doing a review of To Best the Boys by Merriweather. It's a fantasy story about a young girl named Ren. She's a female scientist and her mum is dying of this disease that's been infecting her town. She doesn't have much money or many resources that she needs to help her mother, so she decides to compete for this scholarship that's being run by this mysterious man named Mr. Holmes. He's very influential and yet nobody seems to know who he is. This scholarship competition involves entering into a maze filled with magical beasts and monsters and things that'll kill you, and coming out of it again victorious and alive. Hopefully. People die in the maze, but they still seem to do it. I'm sorry, boys do it. This is the thing that the men do. Girls don't. Girls stay at home and they cook and they clean and they wait to be courted by the men. But that's not stopping Ren. Our female protagonist decides that she's just as capable as the boys that she knows and that she's going to disguise herself as a man so that she can take part in the competition. If she wins, she'll be able to take the entry exams to get into university and to finally become a scientist and get a formal education and maybe find that cure to help her mum. It's kind of like if Milan entered into the Triwizard tournament. So right off the bat, I love this book. I think firstly and foremost, the thing that I loved the most about this book was how empowered I felt after reading it. I love that Ren is strong, she's capable, she's intelligent, she genuinely believes in herself, she has dyslexia. I personally think Merriweather handled the dyslexia very well. Ren is in no way less intelligent than anybody else. It doesn't compromise her confidence or her belief in herself or her abilities. It's just something that she lives with and it doesn't hold her back. I like how Merriweather doesn't try to shove a lesson down our throats. She just tells us a really good story and lets us reflect on it and come to our own decisions about it. There are even some discussion questions at the end, which I thought was a really nice touch. There's also a recipe for labyrinth cakes, which I haven't made yet, but plan to. There is romance in this book, but it doesn't take over the story. I love that the characters are complex and that even the love interest is flawed and makes mistakes in his own way. I don't know if this is just me, but I feel like in a lot of books, the love interest is just this flawlessly romantic character who is charming and charismatic and everything that the protagonist is looking for. And although that may be really indulgent to sort of read and to daydream about, it's not necessarily realistic, and I like that these characters just felt really real. They're not above making mistakes, and I think that makes sense because they're living in a patriarchal society. They're the product of that, and it makes sense that they're flawed, and it makes sense that they have things that they struggle with. It also gives them room to grow throughout the story, and I think it's really sweet. Ren also grows in this way because she is facing issues with her class and her gender, and we get to sort of follow her through those and see how she works through them. It does take a while to get to the maze, which happens about 50% of the way through the book. I wasn't really expecting this. I sort of expected to just go in and she's in the maze and that would be the story. But I do think it works because there is so much that is put into that first part of the book. There are so many different elements of this story that are sort of working together, and I think that was really well done. I think it was paced well, it's interesting. There's the division with the upper and lower classes, there's this disease that's going on, there's the love story, so there's a lot of things that all kind of tie together. I think the story only really takes place over a couple of days, so a lot happens in there. But I like that it's complex and well-rounded. It did take me a couple of chapters to get into. I'm not really sure why. I have a sneaking suspicion that it might have had something to do with the way we're sort of thrown in and we don't really have much time initially to get to know the characters. This does get better. I feel like I started to really connect with the characters and love them around the point where Ren tells her friend Selene that she wants to go into the maze and disguise herself as a boy. I think from that point on, I really started liking the other characters and I really felt invested in their story as well, which was really cool. And I'm really glad that I didn't give up on it because that would have been a terrible mistake. There is also a fantasy element to this story. While there not like witches and wizards and vampires and gremlins and stuff like that. There are magical monsters and there are beasts, and there is this element of mystical magicalness that sort of encompasses the world. The maze itself is magical, and I guess Holt is too, because he made the maze and he's got these funny colored eyes. So, however, the other characters in the story are just regular humans who want to go to uni, but it's still so fun. Ren's a scientist, which is practically being a magician anyway. Overall, if you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of this book. I definitely recommend it if it sounds like something you'd be interested in. I don't think I realized how much of a fan of this book I was until it got to this morning, and I completely disregarded the other review that I was going to do today so I could do this instead. I just really wanted to talk about it because I feel like there is so much that this book does right, and it's so exciting for me to see that in a story that I'm reading. Another thing is I've recently been really getting into books where the protagonist is a female scientist. I'm not sure why, because it's not like I'm a scientist or anything. I guess it's just something I realized I haven't seen much of before until I started reading books with characters like this, and I was like, damn, this is really cool. If you can think of any books like this that you'd recommend, please let me know in the comments, because I would love some more ideas. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from me today. Please let me know in the comments if you've read this book. What did you think? Do you agree with my rambly review? Do you disagree? I'd love to hear it. As always, I encourage the pressing of all of the buttons. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next week.